Syracuse Orange fans, can you feel the heat?
What's going on, Cuse Nation? Welcome to yet another edition of Orange Heat. My name's Giovanni Heater, as always, and thank you for joining me on this Clemson post-game wrap-up episode. The Syracuse Orange fall big for the second week in a row, this time in front of a sold-out Carrier Dome crowd against the number one ranked defending national champion, Clemson Tigers. Syracuse falls at the hands of Clemson with a final score of 41-6. Now, before we dive into the logistics of the game, let's take a look at the stats because, as we know in college football, a lot of the time, the paper will tell a different story than actually watching the football game. So let's look at the book. Trevor Lawrence throws 22 for 39, 395 yards, and 3 touchdowns against this Syracuse defense. He also throws 2 interceptions in this ballgame, which is something interesting that we will take a look at later on in the episode. Travis Etienne, Heisman candidate running back, goes 14 carries for 76 yards. He did sustain an injury early on in this ball game. That could have contributed to the low numbers, but you have to credit this Syracuse defense for holding this guy to only 76 yards on 14 carries. Great play by the Syracuse linebackers from that point of view. Their second guy in there, Lynn J. Dixon. Well, he only went 6 carries for 19 yards, which really is what leads me to believe that Syracuse's linebackers and their defense played that well in the running game department because both of their leading backs went for less than they typically go for, especially for a Heisman candidate in that conversation in Travis Etienne. Receiving game, though, was huge for Clemson, and we expected that. T. Higgins dropped in 7 receptions for 150 yards. Amari Rodgers went 4 receptions for 121 yards, and that included 2 touchdowns on the day. Now, one of those was a big breakaway play, a screen pass to the sideline, kind of a check down receiver type situation. He takes off. Was he out of bounds? Well, they ruled that he wasn't, and they ruled a touchdown. I also don't think he was out of bounds. I think it was close, and if it was a situation where the line's not straight enough, well, that has to fall on Syracuse. That has to fall on the Carrier Dome crew. But it is a turf field. I just feel like it's a situation where undisputable video evidence is what you need to overturn a call. It was originally called a touchdown, and I definitely don't think that there was enough to overturn that call of a touchdown. Therefore, the touchdown did stand on the play, and Amari Rodgers goes 4 for 121 and 2 touchdowns in this ball game. Justin Ross, another big man receiver for Clemson, went 5 receptions, only 64 yards. A quiet game for Ross in some ways, and I think that's really credit to Andre Cisco in the secondary, and Trill Williams, who was matched up on him a few times, and Ifatu Melifonwu playing really strong in the secondary. Cisco did have a little bit of a mix-up early on in the game. He had just got beat by Amari Rodgers. He read the play a little bit wrong, and Amari Rodgers got in front of him, and that was how Clemson got on the board first with that touchdown between Trevor Lawrence and Amari Rodgers. Isaiah Simmons on their defense was very good for them. Very good. He went 11 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3.5 tackles for loss. Clemson goes for 24 first downs in this ball game. 24 first downs. The big thing, though, that looked really good for our defense is Clemson only went 5 for 14 on third down. So not only did the Orange do a good job of getting them to third down, especially in the first half of this ballgame, but they did a good job at ending the drive there. Only 5 out of 14 times did they get a first down on third down. So that's really a good sign of how this Syracuse defense played down the stretch and in tense situations. But in situations where they didn't play good, you could make the argument that Clemson went 612 total yards of offense in this ball game, and their defense loaded up with 8 sacks, which, to be quite honest with you, felt like a plethora more. It felt like 8 million sacks. Tommy DeVito running for his life almost every single passing play in this ball game. Nonetheless, it's only 8 on the credit. Plenty of hurries, though, in this game for the Clemson defense. Looking at time of possession, this was something that was a little bit interesting to me here. Clemson, despite the 41 points on the board, actually had less time of possession than Syracuse, which is surprising because Syracuse did have a lot of 3-and-outs, but it does speak credits to Syracuse's defense. First of all, keeping Clemson off the field as much as they could. They did get 2 takeaways in this ball game. Clemson, 28 minutes and 40 seconds of total time of possession. Syracuse, 31 minutes and 20 seconds. So interesting there. Not big of a gap by any means whatsoever. Syracuse is ahead by 3 minutes here. So not a big gap, but just an interesting thing to look at. You'd expect with a score like 41-6 that the time of possession would be a lot more lopsided than that, especially in Clemson's favor rather than Syracuse's. Well, looking at the Syracuse stat line here, Tommy DeVito goes 15 for 27, 172 yards, and 1 interception. Notice how I didn't say touchdowns. Well, there were no touchdowns scored for the Syracuse offense in this ball game. So Tommy DeVito, 172 yards, not terrible. 15 for 27, not terrible. The 1 pick, we will dive into that in a bit. It was not a good one. Abdul Adams in the rushing department was the leading carrier. Now, a little bit interesting, he had 14 carries. Mo Neal only had 9. Jarvian had 2. Mo Neal was supposed to be the 1-back. It's looking like that could be shifting here. Who knows, maybe this was a 1-game type look, but nonetheless, Abdul had a whole 5 more carries, and when you've only rushed the ball so many times, 5 carries is a significant amount. Now, Abdul goes and takes those 14 carries, and he picks up only 34 yards. The rushing department really struggled for the Orange in this ball game. Mo Neal goes 9 for 22, Jarvian only 2 for a single yard, and Tommy DeVito, he's the next leading rusher here, goes 15 carries for negative 42 yards, which just speaks across the world and just shouts at how much duress and how much pressure Tommy DeVito was facing in this ball game and how much the offensive line struggled, which, like I said, we will get into all that in a little bit here. We're just going through the stats right now. On the receiving end of the football for the Orange, Mo Neal, 2 receptions, 67 yards. Your running back's your leading receiver. That is a little bit of a cause for concern, especially when your quarterback was supposed to be, first of all, very elite, and second of all, you were returning almost every single wide receiver from last year besides Jamal Custis. Everybody else was back. Guys who had big numbers last year and were big contributions in Taj Harris, in Nykeem Johnson. Guys like Tristan Jackson, who was supposed to be fantastic, and I still think that he is, but it wasn't shown in this ball game. Mo Neal leads receiving with 2 receptions for 67 yards. Next to him, Luke Benson. Did we talk about Luke Benson at all this offseason? Because we didn't, right? And it's just a situation where you didn't expect it, but it wasn't special. 2 receptions for 26 yards, nothing to shout about. With this Syracuse offense that was supposed to be so fast-paced, so tempo-based, so dynamic, you wouldn't expect your second leading receiver to go 2 for 26, especially when your running back led it with 2 for 67, right? Sean Riley was in the 3rd slot, 4 receptions for 22 yards, and Tristan Jackson in 4th, a disappointing 2 receptions for only 16 yards in this ball game. He was going to be crucial in the success in this, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but I really don't think the receivers did their share in this ball game. Tristan Jackson, granted, the penalties were going to take it back anyways. Tommy DeVito drops back, slings one deep in the first quarter, and Tristan's right there. Would have been a touchdown, slips right through his hands, right? And it would have come back, so there's that. But that's not known at the time. If there were no flags, that's a touchdown opportunity given up. And Kurt Herbstreit said it again and again. You're playing the number 1 team. You need to catch that football, plain and simple. And Tristan Jackson didn't. And Taj Harris didn't help either. The first drive offensively for the Orange, we get a big 3-and-out, right? We get a big 3-and-out over Clemson defensively. Then our offense comes on. Not bad. Not great, but not bad. And Tommy delivers a beautiful pass right down the left hashes, right towards the middle of the field to Taj Harris. And Taj Harris, all he has to do is catch it and tuck it in for a first down, and he goes ahead and it slips right through his hands. Now, maybe Tommy threw it too hard. Maybe that's a situation where he needs to ease off a little bit. He did zip it in there. But when it hits your receiver in the hands, your receiver has to catch that. Taj has to catch that football there. Offensively, non-existent in this ball game, which is really disappointing because we'll talk about it, but the defense gave Syracuse opportunities to stay in this ball game, to be in this ball game, to even win this ball game. The defense supplied so many opportunities across the board for the offense to succeed, and the offense could not get the job done. It was almost as if the offense wasn't even a factor in this ball game other than giving Clemson opportunities, basically. Now, talking about the defensive side of the football, Lakeem Williams led tackles with 8. Okay? Lakeem's been nice for this linebacker unit because you thought Andrew Armstrong was going to be the main guy, which he is. He's on the starting linebacker core. But Lakeem has experience as well, and he's learned for a long time under guys like Zaire, and under last year you had Guthrie and you have Keelan Whitner, who, by the way, were at this Clemson game. I ran into Keelan in the jam-packed Carrier Dome traffic in the hallways there, in that concrete facility. Ran into him there, just said, "Hey, Keelan, what's up?" But back to the important stuff here. Lakeem Williams has been a nice surprise. I wasn't worried, but I also was concerned at that position, and I was curious to see if it was going to wind up being Michael Jones or Lakeem that had that position for the long run. And we're only week 3. So nothing's set in stone here by any means, but Lakeem's performed well, and he's been the leading tackler in 2 of the 3 ball games thus far, but only 8 tackles, and nothing to shout about. No sacks, no tackles for loss, but he did lead the team with 8 tackles. Now you're talking about tackles. Tackling was an issue for the Syracuse football team. It was a serious issue, and it was an issue last week at Maryland too, and you can make the point that it was an issue against Liberty as well. They're struggling to bring guys down. Now, what that is for, I don't know. You have guys out there undersized, like Antoine Cordy, 5'8", 189 pounds, so yeah, I get that point, but you gotta wrap up better. That's a coaching thing. That's a teaching thing. That's a camp. That's a fall camp fundamental football type thing, and our guys are struggling to make tackles, which is giving up big plays. Like that Amari Rodgers touchdown rush towards the right side. If Cordy would have just brought him down, Cordy was all over him, hugging him. If he would have just brought him down, that play would have never happened. In fact, it would have been a tackle for a loss, I believe. And instead, it goes for 6 because our guys can't wrap up successfully. So, defense, though, we'll get into it. I keep saying we're going to get into it. I promise we will. But defense did play very, very... I'm proud of the defense. I'm proud of them. They played very well, in my opinion. Chris Frederick had an interception. And then also on the defense, Trill Williams had a big interception. So, like I said, they're creating opportunities for the offense to succeed. And we'll talk about that. But good play out of them. I mean, Trill just read it all the way. He completely read Trevor Lawrence's eyes and just jumped right in front of it and took it and then ran well for it as well. And again, Frederick also, it was a situation where it was a pass. He was right up there with the guy, and he got a nice deflection. He got a nice bounce. It went up into the air. He saw it in the air, recognized what the situation was, and he brought it down. And then he gained yards after the fact, and he ran hard and tough. So credits to both of them for creating opportunities in the secondary to go on the other side of the football and let your offense have a chance to put it in the end zone. Heck, these 2 guys almost put it in the end zone themselves. Defensive stats that did concern me, though. 0 sacks. 0 sacks. They had good pressure on Trevor Lawrence, I thought, at times. Sometimes he was dropping back there with ease. Other times I thought they had good pressure. You had guys like Alton Robinson have some big deflections. The first drive of the ball game, a big deflection Alton Robinson had. He had a wide open wide receiver screen, and Alton just got up, jumped up in Trevor Lawrence's way, and batted the ball down. And that created a third down, which created a 3-and-out for Syracuse on that initial starting drive of the ball game for Clemson. So, but 0 sacks. There was a pass rush. There were a couple nice hits, which you like to see. You know, the face of Clemson on the ground, Trevor Lawrence. If you're a Syracuse fan, you like to see that. There was a big hit by Lakeem Williams, which I absolutely loved. He drills Trevor, and I mean drills Trevor Lawrence after he lets the ball go, after he throws it. Now, it was about maybe a second after he throws it. He gets absolutely flattened by Lakeem Williams. They call a roughing the passer. They wind up picking up the flag, and it was good for Syracuse, and the Dome goes nuts. But it just goes to show that Syracuse did get a little bit of pass rush in this game. Couldn't bring down the quarterback, though. 0 sacks. And Lawrence is good at rolling out of the pocket. That's what he does. He was rolling out of the pocket, and he was finding his guys on the run. So it wasn't that the pass rush wasn't there, but they weren't able to follow through the entire play. And only 2 tackles for loss, another concerning thing as well. You'd like to see that number a little bit higher, but hey, you're playing the number 1 team in the country. You got to giddy up, boys, because anything can happen, right? Syracuse only 11 first downs on offense in this game. Definitely a thought for concern. 187 total yards of offense. Another cause for concern. And 9 penalties for 85 yards. There were times that they shot themselves in the foot. Now, I will say the referees, terrible at some points. Terrible. The second drive of the ball game, Clemson goes, yes, their second drive. This is the one they wound up scoring on. I believe it was second or third down. And Ifeatu Melifonwu picks up a pass interference on a deep pass. Nobody in the Dome thought it was pass interference, including Kurt Herbstreit. He said on the TV afterwards, because I went back and I went to the game, then I came back and I watched it on YouTube. I'm a nut. I wanted to make sure I was prepared for you guys, because there's some things you don't catch when you're at the game. And Kurt Herbstreit said that shouldn't have been a pass interference call. In fact, there was pushing both ways, almost more on the Clemson side of the ball. Shouldn't have been called. Should have been left a no call. Situations like that, when it's the number 1 team and the defending national champs, they tend to get a little bit of cushion, so to speak, and we'll leave it at that. But 9 penalties for 85 yards, that can be improved on. That sometimes comes down to a discipline thing. I want to take the time before we really indulge into this ball game, and I want to appreciate the crowd, and I want to appreciate the sellout atmosphere. 50,248 of Syracuse's finest showed up to this ball game on Saturday. And it was a dream come true for me. I've been going to SU games since I was 3 years old, and I have never seen the Carrier Dome like that. I've always, watching college football growing up, I've always wanted the Carrier Dome like you see Saturday night primetime college football. Win, lose, or draw, that happened. And that made the experience all the worth it for me. In fact, I'm mad about this game, but at the same time, I'm not. Because, it was such an incredible atmosphere. Stuff that I've never seen happen at the Carrier Dome. I've never seen Clemson come out for the first play of the ball game, and it sounds like it's a 3rd down and 5 late in the 4th quarter, and you need a turnover. It was at its loudest point at the beginning of the game before the game even started. After the national anthem, way before kickoff even, there were chants of "Let's go Orange." Everybody knows it. Let's go Orange. Let's go Orange. The entire Carrier Dome was doing that. And it was incredible. It was absolutely deafening in there. It was the loudest thing I've ever experienced, and it was the coolest thing that I have ever been a part of. The student section was great. When the team came out of the tunnel, so the student section was wearing all white, and the rest of the dome was an orange out. And when when the team came out of the tunnel, the student section threw orange powder up into the air all over themselves, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it was so cool that you see that happen around the country week in and week out, and I've always wanted it to happen here, and it was here. And the tailgates were insane. All the way up at Skytop, the place is full. Tailgates everywhere. There were live bands. Cuse on the Quad was electric. Place was full. And there were people. Everyone was pumped for the game. It was great. And the beautiful thing, too, is I was a little bit worried that it was, going to be a not a half and half, but like a 70-30 crowd. The first time we played Clemson, there were a lot of Clemson fans there when we beat them at the Dome. And I shouldn't say the first time. The first time was years before that. But by the first time, I mean the first time we were under Dino Babers. And so the first time under Dino Babers, we played him at the Dome. There were a lot of Clemson fans there. And you could hear it when Clemson scored. And I actually sat right next to the Clemson section in this game, so believe me, I heard it. And they brought a pep band and everything from the university, and we booed. We booed them hard every time they played, and we harassed the fans just a little bit. But it was a really pro-Syracuse crowd. I'd say it was about 90-10. Like, the Clemson fans were drowned out. They were pretty much kept to their section and sprinkled a tiny bit throughout, which was really nice to see that it was a pro-Syracuse crowd. That was something that I was wondering about because Clemson fans tend to travel very well. So it was a cool thing to see. And you ask, well, they both wear orange. How can you tell? You can tell. When Clemson scores and the only people cheering are the, 10% of the entire dome, Clemson fans, you can tell who's rooting for who, type situation. Let's get back to the game. I just thank you so much, Cuse Nation, for showing up, showing out. Incredible atmosphere, win, lose, or draw. It was absolutely energetic almost all night. As long as they were in the game, it was insane in there. There was a lot of support from the community. It was great to see, especially coming off of a big loss against Maryland. People still showed up and showed out and supported, and it fed into the team. They were so amped. Like, they were the opening kickoff, I'll never forget this. The opening kickoff, the place is going absolutely insane. Everyone's chanting, "Let's go Orange." We kick it off to Clemson. And the guy catches it. He kind of thinks about running it, and he kneels it. And the Syracuse guy, it was like Lakeem Williams, and it was a bunch of, not walk-ons, but guys that are still learning their way, a lot of freshmen, sophomores, and just special teams players. And they're amped. They're jumping up and down. I remember one guy, I got to figure out who it was. He's literally like skipping around, like he looked like he was shaking. He was jumping as high as I could see somebody jump into his teammates' arms, and they were going like this, pumping up the crowd. And when the offense would come out, they had to quiet the crowd because we were going that insane. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen and I've ever been a part of. And shout out to my boy Gibby for enjoying the game with me. The kid dropped $70 on a ticket to come. Thank you to my grandpa and my Uncle Bill and my dad and my Uncle John for enjoying the game as well. Of course, my grandpa takes care of the season tickets, so appreciate that. But let's talk about this game. Enough about the atmosphere. It was incredible. Let's talk about this game. So, I got to say, this game was not as bad as the score said. It wasn't as bad as what the score showed. I did not see a 41-6 performance out of Syracuse. I really didn't. Offensively, yes. But as a team and as a whole, I really can't say that. I really can't. So, here's why. Tommy DeVito, is it his fault? One of the biggest questions this week has been, is it Tommy DeVito's fault? Well, yes and no. First of all, the offensive line did not help him at all. The offensive line is an extreme problem on this team right now. In fact, we are not going to see success unless that problem gets fixed. And Sam Heckel right now, I thought he was going to play against Clemson. Turns out he didn't. Boy, do we need him back. Boy, do we need him back. The cohesion is just not there. They're not playing as a unit. And to be quite honest, they couldn't stop a thing a thing against Clemson. The offensive line is a serious problem, and that was something Maryland exploited very well as well. Which, by the way, Maryland just lost to Temple. Just throwing that out there. So, good Lord. But the offensive line, a problem, and they struggled extremely bad in this ball game. So, from that point of view, no, I don't think that's Tommy's fault that every single play the kid's running for his life. Literally every single passing play. And if he wasn't running for his life, it's because the pocket collapsed so fast he couldn't escape. And he got taken down. And actually, talk about escaping. You have to give credit to his escapability. He died. They only had 8 sacks, and as I said, it felt like so much more because they could have had so many more. Tommy broke a lot of tackles and shoved a lot of hands away and got away from some sacks in this game. His escapability was actually at a very high level. And that was something that, yeah, it's alarming, but it was definitely surprising and something you were a little proud of Tommy for. That's a positive takeaway for Tommy. His escapability was really good in this ball game. And his O-line didn't help him at all. The kid's running for his life on every play. And his receivers didn't help him as well. As I said, big drops. Big drops. Guys aren't getting open. And there seemed to be a sense of quit late in the game. Now, I left the game pretty much like 3 minutes into the fourth quarter. It just got bad. So, no, in that sense, it's not Tommy's fault. But looking at other things, yeah, I think Tommy looks a little scared out there still. I thought that was going to go. I didn't even expect it week 1. And I thought that was something that was going to go away after week 1. And clearly it didn't. So, yeah, in some ways it is Tommy's fault. Like, let's talk about that interception. We're talking about this game not being the same. Well, let's talk about this. The score's 17-6, right? Clemson has the football. Christopher Frederick gets that fantastic interception, and you're at inside the 10-yard line. And all you got to do on offense is punch it into the end zone. Boom, you're right back into this ball game. You score a touchdown, it's all of a sudden 13-17. If you go for 2, it could have been 14-17. Back to a one-possession ball game. All the momentum is on your side at that point after a big defensive takeaway and followed by a touchdown. And what does Tommy do on the next play? He throws an interception. And a bad one, too. Now, I watched Dino Babers' press conference, and he made the point that the defender fell to the ground, and Tommy sees Abdul Adams in the corner of the end zone pretty much wide open. And he goes, and that's a throw Dino said he wants him to make after watching the tape. And he knows he can make. He throws it, and somehow, some way, the guy gets up off the ground and gets to the football. So if you're cutting Tommy a little bit of slack, do it there. Nonetheless, I think that, dude, it's the same problem that happened last week. He did the same exact thing against Maryland. Literally the same play. Rolls out, pressure comes, he rolls out, and in an attempt to throw it away, he puts it right in the midst of a defender. Right in the hands. It couldn't have been an easier interception both times. So that's a Tommy issue. Like, if you're rolling out and it's first down on the 10-yard line, you have an opportunity to get it in the end zone and get yourself back in this ball game. Like, throw it into section 314. Just throw it up into the rafters. Throw it well out of bounds. Don't throw it a yard out of bounds where a guy can make that play, because it's happened twice now this season. So whether he was looking for Abdul or whether he was trying to throw it out of the way, I don't know. That's something only Tommy DeVito knows, to be quite honest with you. But that was definitely a factor, and that was definitely a problem that I saw, for sure. And this offense struggled the entire game. So it brings up the question, why a pocket passer? I could get into this, but the game is developed around a running quarterback now, college football, right? And we don't have that. We have a pocket passing quarterback, and we continue to recruit pocket passing quarterbacks. it's kind of confusing to me because the teams that are seeing success is with a running quarterback. The quarterback, a dual threat guy that can do both, like Eric Dungy. But Tommy's not a running quarterback. He's a pocket passer. He's never had to run like that in his life. Especially, you can't blame him with the rush that was coming at him. And you got to credit Brent Venables for that too. He found holes in our offensive line. I wrote in my notes here. He had 3 D linemen set up, and then he'd send a nickel back on the blitz. That's confusing the O-line. Miscommunication, that split second of timing off. Boom, he's in the backfield. Tommy DeVito sacked or he's running out of the pocket, rolling out. Right? So, credits to them. It is what it is. But this game would not have been the same if it weren't for the defense. And if it weren't for the offense stalling out. The defense kept Syracuse in this game. The score 41 is because they were so worn out towards the end that they simply couldn't do anymore. They were so worn out because the offense would come out, boom, 3 and out, ball's back. Boom, 3 and out again. Oh, we got a first down. Boom, we're going to give them the ball back again. Oh, defense, go back on the field, even though you're exhausted, because you got to. And you got to continue to fight. And they did. They gave Syracuse's offense opportunities to be in this ball game. That interception from Frederick. And then Trill again. Trill almost got himself into the end zone. And both times we couldn't punch it in. One time we turned it over, and the other time we turned it over on downs. We were at like the 3-yard line. And we ran it 4 times, and we couldn't get it in the end zone. Unbelievable. Just that is on the offense. That is 110%. This game is on the offense. Because the defense played their hearts out, and you couldn't be more proud of the defense for keeping us in this game and playing with such poise on such a big stage and letting the crowd help them. And I give so much credit to the defense in this ballgame. I really do. Now, one of the things I wrote in the notes I've heard people talk about, quarterback 2, ? No. Okay, Tommy's the guy. And that's because there's nobody else with his skill set. No matter how you put it, Rex Culpepper and Clayton Welch are not as good as Tommy DeVito. And I think that pulling Tommy out only could make things worse. So you need Tommy DeVito in there, and Tommy DeVito is going to be the answer. It's just going to take more time than we thought, and that's a lot on the offensive line too, and that's a lot because Sam Hackle's been injured, and guys have been having to play different roles than they did during camp. So it's a whole different look, really. Also, we don't really have a big possession receiver. Is that a problem? Is Jamal Custis that much missed? We don't have a 6'5" guy that can go up and catch a football, okay? Tristan Jackson's 6'1". He's not a possession receiver. He's just not. He's not big enough for it. You saw a possession receiver when you saw Justin Ross and T. Higgins play because they were a lot bigger than our guys. Not bigger than our guys. Bigger than the guy matched up on him, which leads me into another thing that I had written down. My question is, why was Antoine Cordy matched up on Justin Ross and T. Higgins so often? As I said earlier in the episode, Antoine Cordy's only 5'8". He's literally a little bit shorter than I am. Literally a little bit shorter than I am. With guys like Ifatu Melifano, and not to take away from Cordy, he's great. And I'm glad to have him for a 6th year. Really glad. But, this is a guy that played a lot of football for Syracuse. He has that experience, but this is not the receiver to put him on. He's 5'8". Why wasn't Cisco or Ifatu Melifano or Trill Williams or even Scoop Bradshaw on some of these taller receivers like T. Higgins and Justin Ross? That was baffling to me because a lot of the big plays given up, like that one I talked about, was because Antoine Cordy was the single man in coverage. That's a problem. That's a ball that he's never going to win 9 times out of 10 because he's simply almost half a foot shorter than these guys. So that's just a little bit of food for thought there. Another thing I want to talk about, I was unimpressed with Trevor Lawrence. I really was. Heisman, no. The kid's thrown 5 interceptions in 3 games. and he threw 2 against Syracuse, which Syracuse defense is really good. So that's fine. But just 5 on the year? And it's all about his cadence and his presence as well. To be quite honest with you, this is why you saw the Trill Williams interception. Trevor Lawrence, almost every single play, was looking where he was going to throw the ball. There was no looking off the defense. There was none of that. He would look, as soon as the ball snapped, he would look where he's throwing it, and he'd throw the ball there. And that's easy for a defense to pick up on. He didn't look like a Heisman-level quarterback out there, and that's just my opinion. Maybe we played that well defensively that baffled him, because he was frustrated. So, something to think about. Did we shut down Travis Etienne? I think we did. That could have been because of the injury, but like I said, you shut down their other running back as well. So I really think that the defense played that well, the linebackers played that well, that they shut down their run game for the most part. Credit, round of applause. Flame of the game goes to Sterling Hofstrichter. Okay, kid's going to be an NFL punter, no question about it. 470 yards. Kid averaged 52.2 yards. He downed a bunch of them within the 20, couple within the 10, put one on like the 2-yard line. He had a 65-yard long punt. The kid's absolutely amazing. He puts it so high up into the air, he makes it hard to catch on a return. In fact, no returns are ever given up for the most part. Super talented. Credits to him, because he gave Clemson some difficult field position that with a different punter could have been a different story. So very much credit to him, because there were a lot of times they were pinned deep in their own territory, and that allowed our defense to strive in opportunities as well. So looking at defense, sending the house worked for a little bit, and then they started to get Trevor Lawrence going with a little bit of a quick release look so that he wasn't standing back there for as long. That was something I noticed. As I said, missed tackles. Really just a situation where we were outmatched, outcoached in a lot of aspects, and that's mostly offensively for me. Like I said, if the offense punches in, it's a whole different ball game. When we're down 17-6, if the offense scores there, that was the turning point in this football game. And it would have been a different story otherwise. Our run game wasn't there. It's something that needs to be worked on. This game just wasn't as bad as it looked. And you just got to look ahead. It's on to the next one, man. You lost 2 in a row, tough ones. How do you respond to adversity here? That's what football's all about, right? Well, you got a very tough Western Michigan team in the Dome at noon this upcoming Saturday. This is not a bad team. They just beat Georgia State 57-10, and you might think, oh, who cares, 57-10. Well, last time we said that, first of all, we got killed by a Maryland team, and we said, oh, it's just Howard. So you can't underestimate anybody. For the rest of the season, you cannot underestimate anybody, because the fact of the matter is we're not a fantastic football team right now, and we're not what we thought we were, period, bottom line, right? And Georgia State just beat Tennessee last week, which Tennessee's down, yeah, but that's a SEC powerhouse recruiting school right there. And Georgia State beat them. And then Western Michigan beat them by 47. So I think Western Michigan's going to be a really tough team. Tim Lester, welcome back to the Carrier Dome. They played us close last year, if you remember. We didn't win by much, and it was at their house. So I think this is going to be a tough game, especially because we can't score. We really cannot score. So we'll see what happens. We have, I believe it's under 50 total points of offense this season so far. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. I tried to keep it away from a rant and really give you guys the goods on what's the takeaways in this ball game. Syracuse just couldn't get it done for us. And as I said, I think it could have been a different game if a few different breaks went our way. And you saw the 2 games in history, there were breaks that went our way. It's just disappointing. It was so hyped up. It was the rivalry and everything like that. I don't know if that hype's going to be there anymore unless we can play them close again, because we didn't play them that close as far as the scoreboard goes, and that's what a lot of people in the country are going to look at, not how the game developed. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more. As always, I plan on doing a video coming up where we're going to reassess the season, basically, and talk about what do we expect for the remainder of this season? What can this team do realistically? What needs to change? And what can improve? Because there's always improvements that can be made. You got to have the belief without evidence. You got to believe in this coaching staff. And it's not over yet. It's week 3. So as a Syracuse fan, you just got to sit back. You got to breathe. And you just got to let the season shake out and keep supporting the team. The worst thing you could do is stop going to the games and stop watching. So support the Orange. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment here what you thought of this game. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say. But as always, thank you so much for watching. And let's go Orange, baby.
Thank you for listening to Orange Heat, done by pursuing sports broadcaster and high school student Giovanni Heater. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at GeoHeater. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more Syracuse athletics and Orange Heat action. Let's go Orange!